Well, hey guys, I'm Tim Langston with Red Dog Bushcraft. Welcome to another coffee chat. Well, today I thought I would address the issue of the one tool option. I was recently asked if I agree with the one tool option when it comes to knives. And I said, yes, I do. But let me explain. Now, I don't believe that there is a knife out there that can do all of the tasks of every knife. That's why I have many different kinds of knives. I have skinning knives, I have butcher knives, I have fillet knives, I have carving knives, I have survival knives, I have knives for self-defense, so forth and so on. So I don't believe there's one that does everything well. Nor do I believe that there is a knife out there that can replace an axe and a saw in a survival situation. However, using the one tool rule criteria that I have set forth for myself when I look into a survival knife, or let's not even call it a survival knife. Let's call it the knife that I'm going to strap to my side whenever I go off into the wilderness to enjoy the great outdoors. Whether that be hiking, biking, going on overnight stays or treks, or whatever it is, canoeing, rafting, whatever it is that you like to do in the great outdoors, where there is a chance that you might get separated from the rest of society for a period of time, and you need to rely on that tool that is strapped to your side because your other tools that you took with you for this trek or adventure have been lost. Maybe they got swept downstream in a boating accident, or maybe your ATV flipped over, or maybe you just walked away from camp and got lost, or there's many different situations that could occur to where you could get separated from your gear. So there are certain criteria that I like to look for in the knife that I'm going to strap to my side, not to replace all of my other tools because it can do a better job, but a tool that I can use if I don't have the other tools available to me. In other words, if I'm going to carry the weight of something strapped on my side, I want it to be the most versatile tool that I can. So there's a couple of things that I look for, and let's just, here, I'll use this. This is a Pathfinder knife shop. This is the Mountain Lion, and I'll just use this knife as an example of a couple of the criteria that I'm looking for. Number one is the blade profile. I like a French trade type knife design. I like something that from the center of the back where I hold the knife's handle to the tip is pretty much in line as far as center. That gives me a lot of versatility when I work. I like the front to tip down slightly, sometimes a clip point, but most of the time just kind of rounding down, right on down to like a spear point design. Those are the blade profiles that seem to work for me the best in the eastern woodlands. Blade material. I like tool steels. I like 1095. I even like the spring steel. I think all of those work well. The 5160 has been around for a really long time. That's your spring steel. The 1095s, if the heat treat is right on that or the 01 tool steels, the durability of the edge, the wear retention, but yet the ease of sharpening is spot on, and I think they're hard to beat. Now, people will say those steels are great, but you're going to have a corrosion issue. Now, that's true if you don't maintain your blade, but like any good tool, it needs a little bit of tender love and care, and it really doesn't take that much. A little bit of olive oil or any beeswax type product, like some fixing wax or tool gear wax, can be put on this blade, and once that is on the blade and saturated into a sheath, especially if you have a leather sheath, Every time you put it in the sheath, it's helping protect it. And then if you get ready to use that knife for food prep, you don't have to worry about some type of an oil on it that could spoil or damage your food in any way. So that's just a couple of the things that you can use to protect your blade. Does a very good job and doesn't really have any harmful effects. So that takes care of the type of steels. The length of the blade, when I put it up against my hand, I like to see a little bit of the point sticking out. So for me, that means a minimum of 4 inches, right on up to about 6 inches seems to be a good size. Much more than 6 inches, it gets a little bit more intense when it comes to doing fine carbon work or skinning and game processing. But if I get any smaller than 4 inch, I really can't do some of the wood processing that I like that knife to be able to do. As far as thickness goes, 1/8 of an inch for something that I'm going to use as a quote-unquote survival knife is as thin as I want to go. 3/16 really seems to be the thickness that I find lends itself to me to be most advantageous. And 1/4 inch is getting a little thick. It's a little bit harder to maintain that edge and to do some of the finer carving tasks when you get up to a piece of steel that thick. But when it comes to splitting, the more steel you have, the better off it is. So, splitting. A couple of the functions that you might have to do that push this knife beyond what the normal functions of a knife might be is you might need that knife to process firewood or help you make shelter. So you need to baton that piece of wood, which means you're going to beaver chew through the piece of wood all the way around until you get to the point that you can break it, or you're going to stand it up on its edge and put the knife across the top and use a baton to beat on the top of it, and then this knife becomes like a wedge and you drive it down through the center, acting almost like an axe. Now, a knife is not really designed to perform that type of a task, but when you get into some of your thicker steels and some of your more robust grinds, you can get away with that with the properly made knife and not worry about damaging your knife. And that's why the importance of a full tang, one piece of metal from the tip all the way to the end is absolutely crucial, because the more metal you have there, the thicker it is, the stronger it is, the proper heat treat with a proper grind, the more successful you're going to be when you start pushing that knife beyond the limits of what a knife is typically supposed to be able to do. Now, we've talked about the grind a little bit. I like a Scandinavian grind, something around a 22, 24 degree. This one is 11 degrees on each side. It's a 22 degree bevel. You can see how far it comes up on the knife. That does a very nice job of giving me the taper that I need with 3/16 of an inch thick of being able to cut and baton with, but yet it's easy to maintain in the field. I can take a smooth rock, a piece of glass, I can hone this blade. Most of the time I can take my leather belt and just strop it and maintain this edge when I'm out without any issue at all. But when you get back home and it's time to sharpen it, the ease of just laying it and finding that proper angle and sharpening it back up makes it very advantageous. Now, there's some other grinds out there that are really nice once you start getting a little bit thicker. 3/16 and 1/4, a full flat grind seems to do pretty well. It retains a lot of the strength of the blade, but it gets that taper down to where it can be honed and maintained pretty easily in the field if you wind up getting caught out there for a couple of days. Especially when you start getting into those the grinds where you get into like a convex grind, where if you take a saber ground knife and you have a convex put on the very the secondary edge, the secondary bevel, that can be a very durable edge, a little bit more intense as far as maintaining it in the field, may even take a little bit of specialized equipment, but the durability is very high with that particular grind. Some of the hollow grinds and stuff, they're great for butchering and processing game, but they're a little bit too brittle for me and the type of work that I want it to go through if it's a knife that's going to be used for a survival situation. Now, splitting down wood, another attribute I like of that knife to have is a 90-degree spine. And the reason is I can scrape with the back of that spine not only my fire steel to create fire, but I can also scrape wood to get down past feather sticks to the little fine fuzzies, and that makes it easier to ignite, saves the wear and tear on my cutting edge, makes my knife a little bit more versatile. So I like that. Non-coated blades. Now sometimes I will force a patina on them. I like using walnut to do that. Vinegars do a nice job. Mustards. There's a lot of different ways that you can force a patina on a blade, and that'll help reduce some of that maintenance issues that you might have as far as rust becoming an issue. Especially in Eastern Virginia near the salt water like we are, you do have to maintain these blades to keep them in good shape. So, non-coated. Coated blades, it makes it pretty hard to use this knife as a flint and steel. One of the reasons for a 1095 or an 01 is I like to be able to take a hard rock and use this knife as a flint and steel and to be able to start fire. And if you start getting into coatings, it can inhibit you from being able to do that. A lanyard hole at the end. Now, you can see I don't have a lanyard on this knife, and I don't use one a lot. But there are some times when I'm out working over the water that it's nice to put a lanyard on there so that if you drop the knife, you don't lose it. There's other times when you're working in snow, especially when you start getting up in the northern parts of the country, you can get snow a foot deep without any issue at all. And being able to have a lanyard with a long tail on it, so if you drop it, the knife goes through the snow, you can see that like a piece of orange paracord or bright yellow or something like that. It gives you that ribbon to help you locate your knife a little bit easier. But really, the lanyard to lock it onto your wrist is the reason that I want the lanyard hole. And that ability to work out over water, and if you accidentally drop that knife, of not losing it, it can be absolutely critical in the environment in which I operate. Now, the last thing I want to talk about that I look for is a good quality sheath. Now, there's a lot of good sheaths out there on the market, both in natural materials like leather. I like leather. It's always worked very well for me, even in the Eastern Virginias where we have the humidity and the salt water. I wax a lot of my sheaths, and they are form fitted, and with a little bit of care, once a year, let's say, you can keep that sheath in very good operational condition. I think I've only ever ruined one leather sheath from being in a saltwater environment, and that is because, well, it was before I ever learned to start waxing and treating my sheaths. It was just raw leather, and it absorbed a lot of salt water and wound up deteriorating that sheath and doing damage to the knife in the process. But since I learned to maintain those leather sheaths, it really hasn't been an issue. Just a little bit of tender love and care goes a long way. Now, with that said, there's a lot of companies out there now making some kydex where the knife snaps into, and that's nice for the retention. You don't have to, it's already form fitted. There's even some companies that make a locking system on that kydex that it's almost impossible to get that knife out without releasing that lock, whether that be an actual lock that slides up or a thumb release that has to be pressed to open that kydex up. But the nice thing about kydex is if you get it wet, muddy, bloody, and everything else, you can take that knife out of it, rinse it out over some good hot water, soapy water, maybe spray some lubricant in it, wipe it out real good, let it dry, slap that knife back in it, and you're good to go. You don't have to worry about salt water penetrating that plastic at all, and you've got a good retention system that's there. I even have some knives that have a hybrid system, so the knife itself fits into the kydex, but yet the part where it attaches to my belt is leather, and they work out really nice. And you just have to make up your mind if you want that knife to ride high on your belt, or if you want a dangler system, or if you want that hybrid system. But here's the thing you have to remember. The knife is only as good to you as you're going to carry it. So it needs to be comfortable enough for you to carry it, not just when you're walking around like I am today, but when you have all of your gear on. So you got to make sure that it's not going to be in the way of your pack, or when you're getting in and out of your vehicle, or on or off of your ATV, or while you're in the canoe paddling. Whatever the case is, wherever your adventures lead you to go, you need to make sure that that knife has a way of being attached to your body. Because if you go through all the criteria that we've talked about of picking yourself out a tool that will take the place of other tools, will be a decent workaround if that's all you've got to work with, and then you don't have it strapped to your side, it does you absolutely no good. Now, you can expect to spend quite a bit of money for a knife of this quality and attributes, and it has a sheath like we've been talking about. But you know, there's sometimes with your equipment and your tools that it's better just to buy once and cry once and have something that's going to last you a lifetime. And I'm fortunate enough that I have several really good high quality knives to choose from when I go out. But if I had have started out using these criteria when I chose a knife, I'd probably have a few less of them than what I have right now. So that's what I look for in a one-tool option. I hope this helps you as you consider your next knife purchase. Until I see you again, you take care. This is Tim Langston with Red Dog Bushcraft, home of global safety and survival. God bless.